Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. And I've been asked for a long time now to make a video in which I improve an old painting that I'm not as pleased with. So here we go. This is the old painting. I think it's from about 4 to 5 years ago. Okay, I may be mistaken, but I think that's around the time frame. And it's a perfect example. Why? Because one, I found its reference photo, which is a big challenge. Sometimes it's hard finding reference photos for older paintings. I don't know where they are and where I saved them on my computer or maybe old computer. And two, it's a perfect example for a painting that isn't ruined, it isn't messed up, it's not doomed, it's just incomplete, it's unfinished. So we're gonna take it to the table and I'm gonna show you how, with a few simple washes, we can greatly, hopefully, improve this one. So let's get started. So we're gonna get started. A big challenge was actually taping this onto the board because it's all buckled, but I was able to do so. Now here's the thing, before we improve this one, let's talk about what there is to improve. So a couple of main things. First, I'll start with the sky. I love them. I'm not gonna touch them. I think I did a surprisingly good job here with the mix of hard edges, soft edges, and so on. Now the main thing that bothers me here is this patch of grass. Look at it, it's so even and it's just the same boring sap green. That's a big mistake I see with my students as well. You need to vary it a little just to make some interest and also to create a sense of depth. So what I'm going to do is hopefully go with a thin glaze on it because I don't need to darken it much. I just need to play around with the colors. And I'm going to start with blue, and as we get closer I'm going to use more yellow and more warmer colors. Hopefully this will create depth and also give it some more interest. And then it will also bring out this pool of water. I'm gonna keep it lighter. And lastly, details and dark shadows to the house, to the windmill that has to be darker. This is a classic, just too scared to actually finalize my painting type of example. So I'm gonna do that right now. And you know, very often as a beginner, you just don't add enough details. It's a very common mistake. So don't worry about it and add those smaller details. Grab a smaller brush and add it. So what I'm going to do is again start with the grassy areas. Okay, I'm going to skip the road here, keep it lighter, and I'm going to skip the water reservoir here. Okay, keep it lighter as well. So I'm going to start with a fairly cool mix. I don't need much paint here. It's actually to my benefit. I just need a little, okay, to get this. I'm actually going to give it an angle to so that the paint move down. So I give it a really small angle, maybe like barely 10 degrees. You don't need much more than that. Now, I'm going to start with a bluish kind of mix. And it's interesting to see how the paper will take to this paint because it's, you know, it's a very, very old. It's a few years old painting and I don't know exactly what it's been through. But it was in the bag and maybe it collected a lot of dust, so who knows. So I'm just painting over all of these trees, all of these shapes, okay, with this kind of a blue wash. Now you won't see the blue exactly, okay, it won't be visible, but it will be felt, okay, that's the main thing here, because I'm working atop an existing layer with plenty of green color. So here we go, we arrive at around the center. Now here's the place where I want to start adding some warmth. So I'm going to move into my warm mix here. It's just a little tad bit warmer. Now here's the important part. I want to skip the road, okay, and I want to skip the water reservoir. I'm also going to skip the house's walls for now, okay. This is, I believe, rough, Arches rough. At least it's a good high quality paper, which will allow me to, you know, rework this a little more. It can take a beating. So I'm just warming it up a little. Now, I may be mistaken in doing so. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's just I'm using my instincts for this one, and hopefully it will lead to a pleasing result. Now I'm adding a bit of reds too to the mix. A bit of this yellow. I don't mind using stronger mixes around the closer areas because you have to remember that this road comes from here. I may add that with an opaque paint. I just missed that, my bad. But I don't mind using saturated colors here because I'm already painting atop an existing, you know, layer of green. So I can use quite a lot of color in order to beat the existing, so to speak, color on paper. So let's add a bit more water here. Let's go a little warmer near the bottom. And you see I'm way more expressive and free with my colors than I used to be back then, at least. So here we go, like that. This should be covered as well. All of this foliage can be covered. And what I think I can do is just spray a bit of water here and help some of the paint move down as reflections in the water. Okay, so let's go for something like that. So we have this bush here, and maybe this here as well. Just helping some of it move, and whatever random patterns we get, we can keep them here. Now notice something interesting that already happened now, and that is, I think the red of the roof is a little fits or falls into place a little better now, because I balanced out the pretty weird greens that were in the background. Okay, not perfect, and obviously, you know, you can't really fix all mistakes sometimes, but I think it's a good step in the right direction. So what I'm gonna do now is let it dry and then come back with some of the darker colors and the details and all the rest of the corrections. So already, if you ask me, this looks way better. Now at this stage, where things can get a little confusing, what I want to do is start working on a section I'm confident about, and I know that I want to perhaps darken or change. So what I'm going to do is actually focus on the windmill for a few moments, because that's where I know for sure I'm going to have to darken it. And I'm going to use a fairly muted mix, again, keeping it kind of in the background, not going too dark, and not going too light, but you have to be careful here not to go too light as well. So it's pretty dark. I'm gonna use this interesting muted purple that I created, and I'm just gonna start from the center. Let's go like that, and you see it has to be fairly darker than the background, and I start by building its shape from the center outwards. Okay, and this dome is a little lighter. I'm gonna start with a bit of a dark shadow at the back, and we're gonna spread it out in just a moment. But the shape here of the edges is the thing that matters the most, because that's how you'll read the shape, based on the edges. Okay, so here we go. We got this lower section below. Now under it, it goes a little lighter, so I'm gonna, again, mix a lighter mix here, and add it here. Now some of the colors may not blend as well, because again, this is a layer on top of a layer on top of an old paper, but actually I have to say that the paper is taking quite nicely. So now around the bottom, I'm going to be fairly impressionistic, and I'm going to connect the windmill to a fence maybe next to it. Okay, so something like that, and hopefully the colors already feel much more natural and I guess a little more subdued. Now let's add all of these details for the actual wings of the windmill. Are they called wings? I don't know, but sounds makes sense to me. So here we go, like that, and making all of these connections now while things are still a little wet. Now for the smaller details here for the net, I'm gonna go a little more detailed, but not too much. So you see, I'm just getting some of these in here. This is still quite in the background, so I'm fine with it not, you know, being too prominent. One more thing, I don't want to cross the edge of the paper, so I'm stopping with this one a little lower. I'd rather have that be a little shorter than the rest and cut the edge of the paper. I don't know why, I just don't feel like it, basically. So here we go, windmill's done. Now it gives it a little bit more of a structure and presence. Now from that we can actually move forward with the fence here, and just put that in. I'm gonna do it in one go, like so. It's funny how when I looked at this scene, when I was looking for a subject to work on for this video, one of my first thoughts were, these subjects are simply subjects I would not paint today. I would choose different subjects to begin with, and that's part of the challenge, you know, because it really is a different mindset, and you change your opinion every once in a while about the types of references you enjoy, you know, painting. There's a bit of a broken fence here. So had I had the chance maybe to work on this one today, I don't think I would paint this specific reference at all, which is interesting to think about. And I'm just spraying out some of these small details in the background. I just don't feel like there's a strong enough of or an interesting enough of an impression with this one. I'm gonna try and do have some interest in it, obviously, because I am improving it now. But generally speaking, I don't really feel like that's a scene I would, again, paint these days. Now I'm going over some areas that need darkening. Okay, so this foliage here, obviously, still quite simplified, and I'm in a way, I'm kind of mimicking how I would work on it back then too, very loosely. The problem is that back then I wouldn't even put in any details, so now I'm trying to move away from that and actually put in some, interesting details. I'm gonna even use a bit of red for this section of the foliage, and I'm gonna add these, the darkest shadows to the lower parts of these, shrubs, bushes, small trees, whatever they are. Like so. At this point I will get some of this moving down like that. I do think it matters here. So that's our reflection. We won't have to touch that too much now. I'm gonna put a hint of a road, and later on I'm gonna add that in some white paint, I think. Just because I missed it with the previous wash. Now here it is, the trees and all of that, I would love to darken them and mute them as well. So I'm gonna use a lot of red in this one actually, and just go at it. I don't want to overwork them, so that's enough for this one. That's enough for this one. I would ideally make the ones in the background a little lighter, but it's too late for that, so I'll at least mute them with some of this mixture that includes some red as well. I am missing some directional lines here, so I may add this kind of just something to guide us in. I'm gonna do another one right next to it, like that. And then I'm gonna add this kind of a crooked fence here. So you see it just pulls us a bit into the painting because I don't feel like there is a strong movement in the reference to begin with. Again, which is why I wouldn't probably paint it today. Now there's this house in the background. Let's darken it, but still with a fairly muted mix, and I'm talking about just the structure. I'm gonna leave the rooftop as light as it is, okay? So something like that. Now here, so we put things into place. I think it makes a little more sense, okay? Nothing perfect, and again, when you're improving an existing painting, it's not necessarily easy or even possible sometimes. So there are a couple of sheep here that I want to add. So I'm gonna add first the shadow, hinting at them, just grazing or whatever, and then I'm gonna add their highlights, okay? That's gonna come later. Now I'm looking at this rooftop, and I'd like to make some sections of it darker while preserving the lighter sections. So let's mix this combination of Pyrrole Scarlet and Quinacridone Rose. Let's see how this one fits, okay? I'm gonna pick up some of the, there's a bit of a, I don't want to get a background here, so here we go. Let's apply this mix to the house, to the rooftop, and see how it goes. I want to darken it on the one hand, I want to avoid the highlights on the other hand, and I want to increase the saturation a bit, because this is entirely muted. All of this painting doesn't have too strong of highlights. Let's go a little with this Pyrrole Scarlet here, and then back with the bit of a mix here. Both Quinacridone Rose. I'm getting into opaque land here, but I think this will work. Let me clean my brush a bit, make this a more even mix. Leave this very small highlight here for a dormer or window. I think there's something like that here, like so. Hopefully that makes sense. Add a bit of interest to the roof shape, otherwise it's just really boring, like so. And then, most importantly, preserve that highlight down the middle, and this second dormer, and this highlight here on the right. And I'm gonna come back and add some more highlights later on, okay? But just for now, this is good enough, like so. The walls I'm gonna leave the same, but I do want to add these windows in, so just neutralize it a bit. Maybe even more towards the blue. With a bit of a dry brush, we're going to get those details in. Two main windows here. There is this foliage that goes behind the house and kind of hints at the walls being lighter, so let's do that. We have some maybe imaginary lines going down like that, but I think they'll improve the appearance of the structure. And so I think that's a little better now. And I'm thinking, what do I want to add while we're here? I want to mute some of these trees here. Maybe add just a bit of texture to the ground to show it's uneven. That sometimes can help, as long as you don't go, too overboard here and too dark and too strong. And two, maybe when the brush mark is too obvious, you want to sometimes break these off. And here we go. And just a few, I don't know, animals here. There seems to be some sheep and maybe some cows. I'm not a big fan of the composition on this one. I feel like, again, for a painting's purpose, this could be a little more interesting. Maybe with a clearer focal point, but that's fine. We make the focal point, so it's our responsibility. I will add, because I see it here, there's this kind of a pole. I don't know exactly what it is, or maybe it's a windmill in the distance, but I already added that in, so I'm going to add it in. Maybe I'm going to add another lighter one here in the background, so somewhere around here. And maybe add another one in the far distance. I don't want to connect these with wires or anything like that. Just want to put those in. So now I'm going to let this dry for a couple of more seconds, and then we'll add in some of the white opaque paint. We'll see how it goes. It's a very tricky one, but I think we've managed to improve it quite a bit. So I got my trusty Jaune Brilliant paint. Now I think I'll try something a little different. Usually I add this one fairly opaquely. I'm gonna do that, but I may try and lighten up some larger areas, and I'll show you how it's possible to use white opaque paint diluted as well and still keep some interesting things going. But let's first start with the strongest highlight. So I'm just gonna pick up some of the paint here, straight out of the tube, and I'm gonna use it for the lightest bits. So one of them is this side of the rooftop, like that, okay? And if it's too strong, you just go like this, and you lift some of it or blend some of it out, okay? Now we do have a pretty strong one here too, that indicates the shape of the rooftop. This dormer has some pretty strong, bright colors on it. The rest, not so much now, so I'm gonna try and avoid the rest of the areas for now. I'll just stick to what appears to be very light. So we have all this, the cattle here, just with a few simple dots. Hopefully it starts making sense and maybe acquiring a sense of slight realism. Okay, it's going to be a challenging one, and I knew it. Jumping into it, I knew it's going to be a challenging one, but still, hopefully, it will start making a little more sense. Now for this road, I'm gonna get rid of some of the paint and just go at it very weak, okay? And not too, again, bold. You wanna be careful. And then as it gets to this area, and by the way, sorry for any background noise, we have some guests. As I get to this section, you have to be a little more careful, okay? The road is lighter, but I don't wanna overdo it. So just getting started with some gentle shapes. The fence could actually benefit from some highlights. So if you go around the posts like this, you see how it can just enrich it and give off the feeling that it catches some of the light. See, like so. What you could do is just go over the road's side, so one side, and then the other, and that can sometimes make sense as a highlight. Again, I'm playing around with it. I don't mind using too much of this, very light paint, but you do whatever feels comfortable to you. I know not everyone likes it. Now here, I just want to blend some of this because it's the foliage, you see, like so. There is these interesting highlights on this roof that I wouldn't normally include, but as we're already working on this composition, same as the scene, might as well. So it's just the light catching the windows catching the light there. So I'm thinking if I want to add any other major highlights here, I do think that's enough for now. Here's the thing, we can try and lighten up just a bit the wall of the house. I actually think it could look good, so let's try. I'm just diluting the white paint here. Now when I apply it, it may seem too light, but it's actually going to dry a little darker. Okay, so let's give it a try and see how it goes. I don't have much experience using watercolor like this, but I have seen some artists do that. It's really interesting actually. So this is almost like acrylics, almost like cheating, but as you know, I don't see any of this as cheating, so I'm fine with that. So you see, it just gives this wall some differentiation from the green in the background. Now, again, if you're concerned that it's too light, you can always revisit it with some more diluted light paint, you see, like this. But if I'm not mistaken, it's gonna dry slightly darker. Okay, so I'm gonna actually let it rest for a while and just see what comes out of it. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it's gonna dry again, fairly darker. Now, with the windmill, we do have some options. I think I'll do just one thing. Okay, so I do imagine light catching the edge of the dome. So let's do that. So kind of like this, you see? And hopefully that makes sense. Other than that, I don't know if I wanna... Maybe there are some people walking here, but other than that, I think this one's done. I actually like the look it acquired. So here we go. So yeah, I think that works. So a bit of improved sense of depth, a little more interest, a little more details, which is important. And as a beginner, sometimes you're scared to add that in. Now, when you're improving an existing painting, obviously you're at a certain disadvantage. It's not always easy to... You're working based on something that will not change, okay? Some permanent, you don't start fresh. So obviously, some aspects of it may be a little challenging. I'm just adding some touches of yet darker paint here and there, just a bit of it. But yeah, this is kind of the process of improving an existing work, and it's not you don't ever expect too much of it, but you can expect things to kind of fall into place a little better, which I do feel like they have here. Now, I did recognize, and I may regret this, but I did recognize a small road kind of moving in the distance. I'm going to show you with the reference photo. You can see it here. Now, what I'm going to do is maybe add it here, just to give a sense that there is something in the background going on. So let's go add it like this, and you see it may just add a bit of interest. See? Hopefully that makes sense. It just gives it a feeling of a winding road in the distance. Again, if it's too strong, you just go like this. You smoothen it out a little. But in any case, this is it. Now let's wrap it up. So here's what we got when all is said and done, and I think this is a great improvement from the previous version. I just think things fall better into place when you give them the right value, and I do think that in conjunction with that, we also very effectively muted some of the areas that needed muting, added some highlights to the areas that lacked some of that, and also added the details in, which I think look really nice. Hopefully I'll show you a comparison on the screen of the two. Again, before it was way too saturated, way too strong, and it goes to show you how you can fix mistakes when, even if you're at a starting point where you've finished quote-unquote the painting, there's a lot to improve. Now, I also improved it by signing it, because usually subconsciously when I dislike a painting, I just let it go and don't sign it, but now I like it, so I signed it. I also like the dynamics between some sharper edges here, and this corner kind of blends in together with the water and the shadows and everything else. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you want to see more of these, because I have a lot of old paintings. I can fully recreate some of them for you if that's something you're interested in, or also just improving upon the existing ones. I want to thank you so much. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps it reach more people, and also leave a comment down below Let me know your thoughts on this. If you want to learn how to paint like me, the link to my frustration-free watercolor course is always in the description box below. I really appreciate you tuning in and watching the video, and I will talk to you again real soon.